My first experience with God of War was playing 2018.
I started my first God of War game with 2018 as well.
When I look at the fact that Kratos is being replaced by Faye, okay, I think replace isn't necessarily the right word, but still I don't even want to see a God of War title which portrays Faye as the protagonist, even if it's a spin-off. Overall, this perspective shift is absolutely unnecessary through the lens of narrative design, and there are a few reasons why. The first and most obvious reason is Kratos is God of War. To understand why this matters, we need to ask a simple question. What is God of War at its core? It's not just a mythology-driven action series, and it's not defined purely by its setting or combat. At its heart, God of War is a long-form character study of Kratos, an ongoing narrative built around watching one individual evolve across decades of trauma, rage, responsibility, and change. The franchise's identity comes from that continuity of perspective, experiencing different mythologies, conflicts, and emotional arcs through the same central lens. After years of rage, vengeance, years of letting hatred define him, Kratos finally found something worth protecting. We were watching him become a father. His strength no longer comes from hatred, it comes from responsibility. Instead of using his power to destroy, he learns to use it to protect. So when you take a franchise that has spent more than 20 years exploring those themes, and you fundamentally change the perspective through which they are experienced, it's only natural that many fans will feel like something important has been lost. When a franchise is built around a single iconic protagonist, changing that protagonist fundamentally changes how the franchise is experienced by its long-term audience.
We're taking you to a completely different world in this game. The gameplay is unbelievable. The characters are rich and vibrant, and I think if you're a longtime God of War fan, this is going to be really fun for you because it's taking you in a completely different direction, but still keeping those core pillars of the things that you love.
Secondly, as a AAA studio, understanding your audience isn't optional, it's essential. Let's be honest, for most of its history, God of War has resonated particularly strongly with male audiences. Not because women can't enjoy it, clearly they can, I did, but because its central themes, rage, fatherhood, responsibility, legacy, and strength, have largely been explored through a masculine perspective. For over 20 years, God of War has revolved around a distinctly masculine hero. His entire journey explores masculine themes. The fear of becoming a bad father, the desire to become a better man. That's why he resonates. Most of God of War fans don't want to play as Faye. Not because she's a woman, and not because they inherently dislike female protagonists, but because a female protagonist simply doesn't fit the identity this franchise has built over the past 20 years. But that's not all, because there's a deeper issue underneath all of this. This might sound a little controversial, but if Santa Monica had eventually made Atreus the main protagonist, I honestly don't think I would have been upset. Well, I'd be sad because every hero's journey eventually comes to an end, and sooner or later we are going to have to say goodbye to Kratos. But Atreus feels different because He isn't replacing Kratos, he's continuing Kratos. There's an enormous difference between these two ideas. Succession says the hero's journey has reached its natural conclusion and someone is ready to carry their legacy. Atreus isn't separate from Kratos, he's the result of him. Everything Atreus becomes is shaped by his father's journey, his mistakes, his lessons, his sacrifices, and his fatherhood. If Atreus one day becomes the main character, Kratos doesn't stop being the emotional heart of God of War. Players don't feel like they are leaving him behind, they feel like they are witnessing the next chapter of his legacy. That's how succession works. A father grows old, his son becomes a father himself. But Faye is completely different.
I came on board to the God of War series for God of War Ragnarok. At that time, I was kind of a memory within Kratos that was helping him on his journey. I love that I get to deepen who she is, that this isn't only Kratos' memory of her, this is now the full person.
There's no denying how important Faye is. Without Faye, there is no modern Kratos. She's the person who changes his life, the person who gives his journey a new purpose, the person who transforms him from a warrior into a father. But that's exactly why she works so well. Some characters aren't meant to stand at the center of the story. They are meant to transform the person who does. Stories are full of characters like that. Characters who don't need the most screen time to have the greatest impact. They are the emotional catalyst. But a catalyst isn't the same thing as the protagonist. One changes the story, the other is the story. People don't love Faye because she swings an axe or because she's powerful. They love her because of what she means to Kratos, because of the irreplaceable role she plays in his transformation. Without Faye, there is no father, only the ghost of Sparta. And that's why making Faye the protagonist feels fundamentally different from making Atreus the protagonist. It's not a judgment on her character, it's a recognition that these two characters serve completely different narrative functions. But unfortunately, that's not the only problem with Faye. Even if Faye was the perfect character, even if she turned out to be one of the best written protagonists Santa Monica has ever created, there's one problem that no amount of good writing can solve: connection. When a new protagonist suddenly takes center stage, it's easy to forget that they've already lived an entire life before we ever met them. Faye has her own past, her own experiences, her own victories and failures. Most of them happened long before the audience even know she existed. We've only known Atreus for a fraction of the time we've known Kratos, and yet we've been with him since the beginning. We've watched him grow from a child into a young man. We've witnessed his journey from the start. Faye is different. By the time we meet her, most of the defining moments of her life have already happened, and those defining moments, those struggles, they are exactly what make us fall in love with a character. Ultimately, this isn't about whether Faye is a good character or not. It's not even about whether she could carry her own story, because in isolation she absolutely can. The real question is whether God of War can shift away from Kratos without losing the narrative identity it has spent over 20 years building. Because when you change the perspective of a story like this, you're not just adding a new character, you're changing the emotional language of the entire franchise. And for a series that has always asked us to grow with one man across his entire life, that kind of change doesn't just feel different, it feels like something is missing. And that's where a franchise either evolves or loses itself.